Thank you. Our next item of business. Point of order, Pam Gossel.
Presiding officer, on the 12th of March, when my party was holding a party business on equalities and I was sponsoring a roundtable titled "The Power of Women's Voices," guests to the Scottish Parliament were felt they were treated with unjustified levels of suspicion. Upon entering the chamber, one woman had her scarf in the colours of suffragettes confiscated, another woman had her trousers waistband searched, and another had her bag turned out and told she could only wear one of her label badges. A third was told to remove her women's rights.
Ms Gossel, sorry, if I might just stop you there, just for clarity. A point of order is in relation to whether proper procedures are or have been followed in relation to our proceedings, regarding an item of business. And I'd just be interested if the member could explain which point of order, which rule the member is referring to.
I haven't got the rule, but it's basically asking the question how these women were treated, and I've got 3 questions to ask the presiding officer for that.
Okay. Thank you, Ms Gossel. This is not a point of order, and it's not appropriate for the Chair of Parliamentary Business to comment on any other matters that are out with the standing orders at this point. But certainly we can discuss this out with the Chamber. I haven't received your correspondence yet, Ms Gossel, but I'll look forward to receiving it. Thank you. Now, we're moving on to topical questions. And at question number 1, I call Stuart McMillan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what its position is on the reported decision to award Phase 1 of the small vessel replacement programme to a Polish shipyard.
Deputy First Minister.
While there will be disappointment that Ferguson Marine was not identified as lead bidder, for our islands this is an important milestone in the procurement to build and deliver 7 new small vessels for our ferry network. These new vessels will help improve connectivity and resilience for island residents, businesses and communities, and their electric operation will contribute to the reduced carbon emissions from Scotland's ferry fleet and make ferry travel more sustainable. And if I could just point out, Presiding Officer, in advance of further questions, this is a live procurement process and we are limited in what we can say during the 10-day standstill period. The process is being led by CMAL as the procuring authority.
Thank you. Stuart McMillan.
I thank the Deputy First Minister for that reply, and the Deputy First Minister will clearly be aware of the frustration of many people in my community, including the local workforce of Ferguson Marine and myself, who clearly want answers to vital questions, including where did Ferguson Marine rank out the 5 candidate locations, how was the bid in terms of quality and price in comparison to other yards, and what does the Scottish Government now do to ensure Ferguson Marine has a future? Will the Deputy First Minister answer these 3 questions now, and if she isn't able to because of the 10-day standstill period, will she commit to publishing this information when that concludes?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, I understand that the member understands that this is a live procurement, so there are limitations on what I can say right now or the level of information that I can share in the process. CMAL are the procurement authority and Scottish ministers did not play any part in the review of the bids. CMAL have started that 10-day standstill period before the contract can be signed. However, we understand from Ferguson Marine's feedback that they scored highly on quality, and as noted in the news release, CMAL used a technical quality weighting of 65% for this contract, with 35% for price. If I can quote directly from the CFO, David Dishon, he said, "We are very proud of our bid, and although we priced it competitively, we were up against extremely tough competition." He said, "We were pleased to see Ferguson Marine's bid rated so highly on quality, and reaching the final round of bidding demonstrates the strength of our proposal and gives us renewed confidence in our ability to produce Clyde-built ships that are world-class." I understand that the member has received some assurances from CMAL directly on the process that was carried out as well.
Stuart McMillan.
Thank the Deputy First Minister again. I've never doubted the abilities of the shop floor workforce, and the fact that they have built vessels with some antiquated equipment highlights their abilities, including building the 3 previous small vessels. And quite frankly, Deputy First Minister, the workforce have been let down by the board and also by the management of the yard. Now, what steps will the Scottish Government now take to ensure that there is a board and a management at the helm who can deliver a yard the workforce deserves? Will the Deputy First Minister agree to meet with Alex Logan, the shop steward, and myself to discuss the future of Ferguson Marine? And can the Deputy First Minister say if there is a prospect of the yard being directly awarded work from Phase 2 of the small vessel replacement programme.
Deputy First Minister.
Well, can I start by agreeing with Stuart McMillan about the ability and the dedication of the workforce, and say that I would be very happy to meet with Alex Logan and Stuart McMillan to discuss these matters. I've spoken with Alex on a number of occasions, and I hugely value his commitment to the workforce and his insights as well. The member Stuart McMillan talked about the equipment and so on, which is why we have agreed and allocated up to £14.2 million over the next 2 years to enhance the yard infrastructure and deliver productivity improvements so that they are in a better place to be able to bid competitively. And we will consider future vessel contracts from public agencies, but the board is developing its commercial strategy, and that targets a range of opportunities and will be spearheaded by the new chief executive when they come into post, which we hope is shortly.
Thank you. Sue Webber.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The SNP's catastrophic mismanagement of Ferguson's means that ferries which could have been built on the west coast of Scotland are instead looking like they're going to be made in Eastern Europe. Phase 2 of the small vessel replacement programme is a long way off, Deputy First Minister. So in light of this, can the Deputy First Minister outline what actions the Scottish Government are taking to ensure the Glen Rosa is delivered on time? And will the Deputy First Minister deliver a statement to Parliament on what the future is for Ferguson Marine and the hundreds of jobs that depend upon it?
Deputy First
Well, of
Minister.
course, the hundreds of jobs have only been protected because of the actions of this government, and the constant negativity from the Conservatives, using words like catastrophic, does nothing to help the yard secure work on the open market, and it is extremely frustrating to hear that. The bottom line here is that Ferguson Marine are focused on completing the Glen Rosa. We await, as the committee does, I know, an update from the yard in terms of timescales. The second focus is their commercial strategy, which was never only predicated on one contract, because that would be no commercial strategy. The point here is that they have additional work coming in, which we hope to be secured in April. There are other contracts that they are very hopeful of securing shortly, which David Dishon referred to in his commentary yesterday. And there are other opportunities around the small vessel replacement programme phase 2. She will know that extensive analysis and legal advice indicated that a direct award of this current SVRP contract to Fergus Marine would have introduced substantial risk, perhaps creating the worst of both worlds, where the boats don't get delivered to the islanders and Ferguson Marine don't get the contract because it ends up in the courts. And that is what we have tried to avoid, and why we agreed to open procurement.
Thank you. Claire Baker.
Thank you. Presiding Officer, it is a sorry state of affairs when a shipyard, nationalised by the SNP government, is not competitive and is unable to successfully bid for work that was widely recognised to be a good fit for Ferguson's. To secure work, Ferguson's need investment and support as well as stability. Does the Scottish Government believe that the current procurement process for our ferry fleet is fit for purpose in light of the failure to secure the work for Ferguson's?
Deputy First Minister.
I find that question quite remarkable, because the member has essentially told me that they don't think the procurement process is fit for purpose because Ferguson Marine didn't win. And the point here is that a procurement process needs to be fair, it needs to inspire confidence, and if there had been an alternative decision made by CMAL, who are acting independently of ministers, and it's important to stress that point, I think the questions would have been what else ministers have been doing. The bottom line here is the member has asked for about investment support, and yes, we have agreed £14.2 million to invest in equipment, to invest in the yard, so that it can compete on a global basis. She talked about stability, and the commercial strategy is very clear about the potential work that the yard can secure. The yard has secured additional work, and it would be nice to see the yard being recognised for the work that it has secured to date whilst it completes the Glen Rosa. And perhaps if we talked more about the skills and the ability of the yard here, instead of constantly talking it down, they might have greater potential to win that work.
Thank you. As you may expect, there is great interest in the questions before us today. In order to get in as many members as possible, concise questions and responses would be appreciated. I call Jamie Green.
Thank you. I have to say the hubris from the Minister today is outstanding. Ferguson Marine has not been let down by the board. It's been let down by the SNP front benches and the Scottish Government. How on earth is it supposed to compete on price with Poland and Turkey? If that's the case, then how are they ever going to win any contracts? Surely what the workers at Ferguson Marine want to know, and the Deputy First Minister has an opportunity right now to do so, is look into that camera up there and tell those workers and the people of Inverclyde why this Scottish Government and their agencies have lost confidence in their ability to build ships in Scotland.
Deputy First Minister.
Into any camera, I've been at the yard and I speak directly to the workers on a regular basis. And what I find incredibly frustrating in all of this conversation is it's not about how I feel, it's about supporting Ferguson Marine to be able to procure and secure work in an open procurement process which is fair, and to support them to be as competitive as possible. That is the reason for the investment of the £14.2 million. The commercial strategy never would rely on one contract alone. The point here is that they are competing for a number of different opportunities. Some of that work they have already secured. So I stand here reflecting on the talents and the skills of the workforce in having secured work already, and we will back them to be as competitive as possible with this investment in additional support.
Katie Clark.
Does the Cabinet Secretary accept that there is both a social and economic value in the yard, and there would have been a public value in a direct award? Does she accept that whilst there has been no shortage of money spent, there has been a lack of investment, and the investment now is too little and too late? Does she accept that we now need investment to ensure future contracts are made to Port Glasgow? And can she outline how the £14.2 million she has referred to is to be spent?
Deputy First Minister.
I thank the member for those questions, which I think are very fair questions. The point on terms of public value of a direct award, I take that question really seriously. My concern, and I outlined it in last summer, although I didn't make the final decision, that's for CMAL, the issue that we had is that in a very, very litigious industry, to have gone down the direct award route created significant levels of risk that would have resulted in this contract potentially being in the courts, ensuring that Ferguson Marine didn't get the work when they needed it, and that the islanders didn't get the vessels. Now, she may shake her head at that, but I'm afraid, looking at the legal advice and the analysis that was done, that was a very real and pressing possibility, and that the route that we've taken right now ensures that we have reached this significant milestone in delivering 7 new vessels for our islanders. But she's right in talking about investment. And whilst there's been a lot of attention given to the funds that have been given by the government to deliver the Glen Rosa and the Glen Sannox, that is not the same as investing in the yard itself. And that £14.2 million is based on a list of priorities that Ferguson Marine have supplied us with around equipment and infrastructure at the yard, which will make them globally competitive.
Thank you. Kenneth Gibson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can the Deputy First Minister confirm that the Permanent Secretary advised the Scottish Government that it would be illegal to make a direct award? That's certainly what he told the Finance Committee this morning. And can she expand on what these 7 small vessels will actually mean for our rural and island communities?
Deputy First Minister.
The 7 small vessels are going to be absolutely transformational for our island communities, and we know it's well documented how challenging it has been for those islanders, and that supplements the 6 larger vessels that are due to come into service over these years. So that, I think, is in no doubt it will be transformational. This is an important milestone, and we have to make sure that that procurement process is complete and the boats are delivered. In terms of the legal advice, I will say that there was extensive analysis, there was extensive legal advice that indicated that a direct award of the SVRP contract to Ferguson Marine would have introduced substantial risks, potentially meaning that the yard didn't have ships to build and our islanders didn't have the ships that they need. And that was not a risk that I thought appropriate to introduce into this process.
Thank you. We move to question number 2. I call Jackie Bailey.
To ask the Scottish Government for what reason hospitals are reportedly still using MRI scanners, CT scanners and X-ray machines that are decades old, in light of reported warnings by experts that equipment over 10 years old should be replaced.
Cabinet Secretary Neil Gray.
Presiding Officer, as Jackie Bailey will appreciate, equipment does not just cease to function as soon as it reaches 10 years old. However, we know that equipment does not have an infinite lifespan either, and life cycle replacement planning is ongoing. This includes an ongoing radiotherapy replacement programme supported by annual funding, including £18.5 million this year. A further £19 million has also been allocated for equipment investment this year as part of additional funding provided to the portfolio at the spring budget revision. This supports replacement ultrasound and X-ray machines and other imaging equipment. In the 2025-26 budget, it provides a 5% uplift to Board's core capital allocations, supporting maintenance and replacement programmes, and a further £30 million supports priority equipment replacement based on Board's assessment of need.
Jackie Bailey.
In hospitals across Scotland, patients are going back to the future with vital MRI and CT scanners that are often over 15 years old, X-ray machines that are up to 27 years old. Now, the Cabinet Secretary will be aware of the independent report recommending that CT and MRI machines over 10 years old should be retired. The Society of Radiographers has said that older equipment is unreliable and often operationally slower. So can I firstly ask the Cabinet Secretary, how far does unreliable equipment contribute to the current diagnostic waiting times? And secondly, given the extra £2.5 billion for Scotland's NHS from the UK Labour Government, can he confirm when the out-of-date machines will actually be replaced?
Secretary.
Well, I believe I've already answered the second part of Jackie Bailey's question in answer to the first, in terms of the allocation of resources that we're giving to boards to take the decisions. And of course, it's also for boards to take a risk-based analysis as to the appropriateness of the equipment that they have before them, both in terms of the parts availability and maintenance, and also in terms of their reliability and productivity. And it's on that basis that we take our assessments. On the first part of the question, Jackie Bailey will know that we're already seeing improvements in diagnostic waiting lists. Q4 of 2024 had the 4th largest improvement since the pandemic, and at the end of December the waiting list had reduced by over 18,000 compared to the end of 2024. So there is significant progress being made in diagnostic testing, and there's more to come with the budget that Jackie Bailey didn't vote for.
Jackie Bailey.
Well, far be it for me to point out that it was the UK Labour government that gave you the money and the SNP failed to vote for it. In Westminster. Just a fact, Presiding Officer. I note that the Cabinet Secretary set out the money. He didn't say when the machines would be replaced. We know that outdated equipment is only part of the story, and only a few weeks ago I asked the First Minister about the reported shortage of clinical radiologists, which is projected to rise to 263 fewer posts than needed by 2028. The effects are being felt now. The latest diagnostics waiting list data shows that at the end of last year, there were 3,954 waits of over a year. That's an 11.7% increase in the space of a year. When will these long waits be eradicated, ensuring that patients needing tests are seen without any further delay?
Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I've already set out the higher-level data around waiting times, but the latest figures show that our plan to bring down waiting times is delivering. That was part of a £30 million investment that came in this financial year. We're investing £100 million in the current year. The £30 million delivered almost 56,500 diagnostic procedures, exceeding the original plan to deliver 40,000, so that's up by 41%, reducing the waiting list size for imaging by almost 12% and scopes by more than 4%. So the plan that we have in place, and I remind Jackie Bailey, one, that she didn't support the budget to see that money going into the system to see those reductions in waiting time. So she wants to see the end without willing the means. We are delivering upon, and I look forward to reporting more on this regard to Parliament in due course.
Thank you. Joe Fitzpatrick.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Unlike Jackie Bailey, I was really proud to vote for the Scottish Budget along with the Cabinet Secretary, providing that record direct investment for our National Health Service here in Scotland. It's really important that we recognise that the money involved in that is money which is Scotland's money, and it's for this Parliament to decide how that money is allocated. I voted for it, the Cabinet Secretary voted for it, and Jackie Bailey and our colleagues did not. Can the Cabinet Secretary provide an update on his engagement with health boards regarding the potential for that funding to be used to update equipment, whilst also encouraging conversations on increasing innovation across the NHS and social care?
Cabinet Secretary.
I thank Joe Fitzpatrick for his question. Of course, as part of the budget and budgets passed, we've also taken decisions here in Scotland to raise additional revenue by using the powers of this Parliament around taxation, which again the Labour Party apparently doesn't support any longer. We are already working with all health boards to develop a whole system NHS infrastructure plan that focuses on reform, innovation and resilience. This includes specific consideration of ongoing equipment replacement cycle work undertaken by the NHS National Equipment Group, and the first part of this whole system planning work, which is to assess immediate priorities, it's well underway, includes assessment of the priority of equipment replacement. That's supported by funding of £30 million for this coming financial year, and this is in addition to the funding that's already allocated each year to the radiotherapy equipment programme.
Thank you. Question number 3, Tess White.
To ask the Scottish Government whether it will review public sector guidance on single-sex spaces in light of reported concerns about the Care Inspectorate and the Scottish Prison Service.
Cabinet Secretary Shirley-Anne Somerville.
In April 2022, the Equality and Human Rights Commission published some revisions to their guidance entitled Separate and Single-Sex Service Providers, a Guide on the Equality Act, Sex and Gender Reassignment Provisions. In this guide, the Commission clearly states that as regulator for the Equality Act 2010, they provide guidance on the law to help organisations comply with their legal obligations. The Commission has recently completed a consultation on their statutory codes of practice that sets out the steps that should be taken to ensure people are not discriminated against. The codes of practice explain how the Equality Act 2010 works in relation to provision of services, public functions and associations, providing practical examples to illustrate how the law can be used to protect equality. The updated codes of practice have yet to be published. The Scottish Government expects all relevant organisations to comply with the requirements of the 2010 Act and other legislation in their role as employers.
Tess White.
Cabinet Secretary, you may be interested to know that the Care Inspectorate guidance for children and young people's services on the inclusion of trans and non-binary young people makes the following statement, and I quote, "The provision of gendered facilities such as toilets is social convention. There is no law in Scotland about this." Does the Scottish Government agree with the Care Inspectorate's statement?
Cabinet Secretary.
The provision of the Equality Act 2010, including those relating to single-sex spaces and the general exception in relation to communal residential accommodation, apply to Scotland. Any issues of how these are operating in particular situations are matters for the EHRC as the enforcement body for the Act and for the relevant public body concerned.
Tess White.
No. It's a ludicrous and frankly chilling statement from a regulator that's supposed to protect Scotland's most vulnerable children and young people. There are massive, massive safeguarding issues arising from this reckless guidance. But it's not just the Care Inspectorate. The Scottish Prison Service is in the spotlight once again because it's allowing trans-identifying prison officers to perform intimate and utterly unacceptable rub-down searches of vulnerable women visiting the prison estate. Violent trans-identifying men can still be housed in the female prison estate in certain circumstances. So will this Scottish Government finally do the decent thing, lay down the law on Scotland's public bodies and tell them to withdraw this ill-informed and insidious guidance which allows the rights of male-bodied individuals to transcend those of women and girls?
Cabinet Secretary.
With regards to the Care Inspectorate part of the member's question, everyone in Scotland deserves to receive safe and high-quality care that meets their needs and respects their rights and choices. And it is very important that the rights of and the rights to all of those involved are considered and respected in everything that is done. With relation to the Scottish Prison Service, the member will also be aware that new rules were introduced in 2023, which provides for visitors. The law states that visitors are searched in accordance with Rule 106 of those rules. Consent is required. At Rule 106(3), it is made clear that general searching of the person or their clothing is to be done by an officer of the same gender as the visitor, and it must be completed as quickly and as decently as possible, and the use of force is not permitted. And I would also stress at 106(4) that a visitor who is being searched cannot be required to remove, and a search must not involve the removal of any clothing other than an outer coat, jacket, headgear, gloves or footwear.
Ash Regan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Well, another week, another egregious breach of women and girls' human rights, this time impacting on vulnerable children in care and women on the prison estate, many of whom will have trauma backgrounds. Does the government not understand that by promoting this illegal and illiterate gender self-ID policies that override and nullify sex-based safeguarding through handing out access all area passes, that this is completely unacceptable? When is the government going to wake up to their obligations to ensure that public bodies follow the law, ensure safeguarding and women's human rights are upheld before the next scandal unfolds, probably next week?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, as I've made clear on many occasions now, the Scottish Government strongly supports the separate and single-sex exemptions in the 2010 Equality Act, which can allow for people to be excluded when this is a proportionate means of achieving a legitimate aim. I also mentioned in my original answer the very important guidance that is published by the Equality and Human Rights Commission, and indeed their work on the statutory codes of practice, including that work to update that. And I look forward to the Commission continuing that work and for that updated code of practice to be published.
Thank you. That concludes topical questions. The next item of business is about to follow. I'll allow a moment or two for front benches to organise.